Ladies and gentlemen, we interrupt your regularly scheduled programming to bring you this special bulletin. I come from an era, from a generation where merit actually meant something. If you did a good job, you were rewarded. And on the flip side, if you failed at your job, if you delivered poor results that resulted in, well, not meeting your sales figures or your target numbers, well, then you were let go after you continued down that path. We don't see too much of that in the gaming industry. In the entertainment industry as a whole, we see a lot of failing upwards. But apparently, well, Dragon Age, the Veilguard, and BioWare, they failed the correct way and were kicked out, fired, let go, convinced to quit, you might say. The first information about this was Corrine Bush, who says they took an offer they couldn't refuse. So perhaps that is one of the unfortunate failing upwards in this. But according to CBR and all the talks on the interwebs right now, BioWare fires every writer who worked on Dragon Age the Veilguard. And please forgive me, this may sound cold and callous, but good. You made a terrible game with terrible writing and terrible voice acting and terrible dialogue and terrible world building and terrible game mechanics. You got exactly what you deserved. People can argue that 1.5 million in sales, that's nothing to sneeze at. And you are correct, unless you're talking about a game that is, 8 years in development and a budget of upwards of $200 million, more than likely, reaching half of the projected or hopeful sales from BioWare. That's a failure. Now, some people may like the game, may despise the game, may never have touched the game with a 10-foot barge pole. It doesn't change that it did not sell. Period. Even with people going out there, putting their money where their mouth is, like my moronic self, and streaming the game, getting 20 hours in and not being able to suffer through another single solitary minute. Others like Sophia Narwitz and Sid Alpha went and finished the game, Sophia going so far as to 100% the game, because that is a level of tism that I can only aspire to. But let's get back to the art. Even after those reviews, the game was still, well, their reviews said everything you need to know. The game was bad. They showed their audiences, and the audiences closed their wallets, walked away, never to be heard from again. But back to the article. Or to the article. I haven't even started yet. Anyway, BioWare leaves off the entirety of Dragon Age the Veilguard's writing staff. Good. Amid major internal restructuring and the lack of profitability of the game itself, when it's such an astronomical failure, again, for the first time then in quite some time, apparently, the people responsible for the garbage were taken out with the garbage. Per Friction Horizon, significant changes within BioWare in recent days have led to a whole host of subsequent shifts. When a company loses money, sure, it's a multi-billion-dollar company. I'm sure the company I work for would just absolutely love to keep me on the payroll if I failed every quarter after every quarter after every quarter. I'm sure the multi-billion-dollar company would love to keep me on when I continue to lose them money and show absolutely no improvement. Yeah, that makes sense. Among the most prominent of these is the loss, well, I wouldn't call it a loss, of the entire studio's writing team, good, for Dragon Age the Veilguard, including lead writer Patrick Weeks. So it's all your fault for the writing and the dialogue. That's who we get to blame for this, folks. Who announced his departure from the company after 2 decades in a post. What happened? You've been with the company for 2 decades. You've been around when the writing was better. What happened, Patrick? What got into your head? What pushed you in one direction or the other? Weeks wrote, quote, "It's been a privilege to work with so many amazing devs who've failed at Dragon Age Veilguard over my 20 years, definitely not in the past 5, at BioWare. And I will cherish the memories and the wonderful folks in the community I've met along the way." Thank you all. Well, thank you, Weeks, showing us that maybe, perhaps, failure is rewarded with, well, separation and a hope that you do well in your future endeavors. 4th entry of the main series of the Dragon Age video games. I wouldn't associate Veilguard with any of the other games. BioWare's action role-playing game, which terrible action, terrible gameplay, terrible fight mechanics. Dragon Age Veilguard released in 2024, serving as a sequel, blah, 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 blah. Brief little history of the game. Rook unwittingly, yeah. If you played the game, if you watched a review, you know about all that. Was met with near unanimously favorable reviews from the critics because they're bought and paid for shills. And audiences alike. That's a bold-faced lie. Because if it was oh so favorable with the audience, why didn't they buy it? You think they would have sold more than 1.5 million copies, right? This is the argument that we get thrown against us when it comes to all aspects of the entertainment industry. Well, I liked it. It was great. We loved it so much. The critics score is just 100% on Rotten Tomatoes, but the audience score is 20. Or the audience score is 75 or 80 when only 100 people have come in to review it. Well, that means not a lot of people watched it, and the ones that did could barely care enough to go give it a review. If these audiences love these games so much, where are the sales? And unfortunately, it's the bloated budgets that are getting more and more bloated year after year, quarter after quarter. $200 million is nothing to sneeze at. Sure, maybe they do need that much money when you have 400 people working on the game. But that's still, maybe that's the process they're going through right now. The restructuring, the bloat inside of the studios, the 3,000 people, 2,000 people, 500 people to work on a single game. Maybe they're starting to realize that that's entirely too many people on the payroll to work on a single game. And then, of course, work gets mixed up here and there. Communication is lacking, and you end up with the buggy mess being put out by Ubisoft, EA, and the like. Maybe shrink your staff, which will in turn shrink the budget, have more people focused, smaller teams focused on the project. Who knows what the product will end up looking like? Maybe that's where all this restructuring is taking place. Although the title was the subject of, review bombing because we're going to, and quote unquote fans. This is the same defense that movies and TV shows get. Disney and Marvel, Star Wars, review bombing, and so-called air quotes fans. Because you don't really care about the game. You're just giving it a bad review because you're following the trend. You just like to hate. No, ladies and gentlemen, we want something to throw our money at. We want something to give our attention to. We want to be entertained. Make it fun first, fuckers. But you're not doing that. You're failing on such a fundamental level from the beginning that we have nothing to be interested in. We have franchises, again, just like Dragon Age, like Star Wars, like Marvel, like Doctor Who, like any other long-standing franchise. And people are a little worried about the Doom franchise right now. We'll have to wait and see. I have my opinions and maybe ruffle a little feathers on that last video. But people are concerned and they're upset and they're voicing their opinions in any way, shape, or form that they can, only to be brushed off to the side, insulted, claims of review bombing when the positive review bombing happens as well. People going in to give it a 10 out of 10 or a 5-star rating who never watched it, didn't give it the time of day, but simply, I love my mega corporation Disney, so I have to give it a positive review. And claiming that we are not fans because we're angry, we're upset and irritated about the direction these franchises are going. We don't care for the nonsensical writing from the character of Trash in Dragon Age the Veilguard. I'm not going to change that. The character was garbage, pretentious, snotty, and annoying. And fans, actual fans of the Dragon Age series, came out and voiced their opinion, and their regards, their criticisms were just brushed off to the side as istophobic. And when you do that, ultimately what ends up happening is that fans stop being fans. Anger is a response from a fan. It is from a place of care and concern and love for the IP, for the franchise that they grew up with, that they enjoy as part of their escapism. Apathy is where the studios will lose. When you no longer get people making videos, no longer having discussions on this, that, or the other, on the look of Norman and Harry Osborn in the Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man, when people stop talking about Carla Connors, then you have a problem, because then the fans, they're just not watching. They no longer care. They've already moved on to something else, and that is the death knell for the franchise. Continuously insulting the critics, that's a losing formula. Thanks to so-called fans of the series who lambasted it, purportedly woke characters, because in the eyes of people who define woke as negative, they were. It was ideological checkbox, forced nonsense, and cringe at best dialogue. At worst, insulting and insufferable. And yet, you ignored the critics and ignored the criticism, brushed them off of being istophobes, and now you suffer the consequences. Or, you got exactly what you deserved. Dragon Age the Veilguard still managed to amass an average review score of 80% across all platforms on a review aggregator Metacritic. Well, that's because the people that bought the game, that cared about the game, sure, they gave it an 80%. I think I had a couple of good things to say about the Veilguard, but the people that watched me play, well, they decided to walk away from it. They didn't buy it, which is why you only had 1.5 million in sales instead of the hopeful 3 million or more. The game also fell short, very short, of early sales projections throughout the first 3 months of release, selling just over 1.5 million units compared to an expected 3 million. I'll go ahead and link the rest of the article and spoil. Let's see what else this says. In spite of an unexpected hurdles and sales shortcomings, players have continued to journey back to Dragon Age the Veilguard in the months since its release. Sure, people are still talking about it, but you still have a little comparison. Go over a couple of more things. 1.5 million players compared to the launch sales of previous Dragon Age games. Now what are they comparing it to? Over here, 1.5 million sales includes not only copies purchased from consumers, this is what makes it worse. So they're comparing it to, I believe, well, what was the previous one? Not Origins. It's somewhere down here. Ah, yes, it is Origins. 3.2 million copies sold in 3 months from November 3rd, 2009 to February 8th. It couldn't even reach, much less break, the sales of the previous entry. That's called apathy. People walking away from your franchise. But the fun part. What's worse, the 1.5 million figures includes not only copies purchased by consumers, but also users who tried out the action RPG through EA Play Pro subscription. So its full game sales are even lower. So they're worse. People who have EA Play Pro, I guess, much like, what is it, Xbox Game Pass, especially on PC, if I decide to use that for Doom the Dark Ages, is that going to show up as a sale for Doom the Dark Ages, even though I hadn't purchased it? Or anyone else with the Xbox Game Pass? Are those numbers going to show up as the 1.5 million figure? Or whatever it ends up being for Doom the Dark Ages? That's a little sketchy. But of course, all the usual suspects, and I thank Vera Dark, the lovely closet misogynist here, who does fantastic content, and just like myself, when she runs her mouth, she puts her money where her mouth is. Go check her out if you haven't already. She puts her money where her mouth is, despite getting lambasted as not a gamer. She has video after video after video. She plays the game, she reports on the news, and gives her actual honest opinion. Unlike troglodytes at the so-called game journalist websites who, well, if you remember Frost's little speech, a team of people play the games and a team of people write the articles. Us as content creators, we ourselves have to play the game, and most of us don't go around begging for a review code. They're nice, but I'm not begging, and I doubt Vera Dark is begging. I doubt she's getting any free content codes, free game codes anyway, considering, well, from what I've seen, she's honest about her reviews. Anyway, thank her for sharing this. Despite what idiots on the internet claim, internet might say Veilguard was, in fact, a disaster of a game. Yes, it was. This little snippet she's sharing right here from, I believe it's VG247. Who is this? Where are you at? I can't read your name. Oh, Mark Warren. It looks like the entirety of Dragon Age, the Veilguard's main crediting team has been fired. Yes. Let's see. Do I got it up there? So all the articles go going around, and of course, the usual suspects are passing the buck, blaming, well, the wrong people. Here's the lovely quote from their article. Given that despite what idiots on the internet might say, Veilguard was far from an unmitigated disaster of a game, the sales figures would disagree. The firing of the entire writing team would contradict that little statement there, Mark. Even if it didn't hit the potentially overzealous targets EA set for it financially. Where are we at? Dragon Age Origin 15 years ago, before video games were the #1 entertainment brand in the United States or in the world, sold 3.2 million copies in 3 months. Video games are the juggernaut of entertainment right now, and this game, Dragon Age the Veilguard, couldn't sell 3 million, couldn't sell 1.5 million. In such a market that is saturated with buyers, like beyond anything it's ever been, you think 3 million as a target is an overzealous target from EA? It'll be sad if indeed the entire writing team behind it, aside perhaps from some localizers who are trash anyway, who are listed as part of their other teams, have indeed either been shown the door, which I hope they have, because again the writing was trash, or departed the studio on their own terms. In other words, if you don't quit, you're fired. Especially since many were longtime Dragon Age series stalwarts, then why couldn't they make a better writing? Why couldn't they make a better game? They've been here before. If they worked on the other games, why couldn't they take those same skills and put them into the Veilguard, who'd also worked on previous entries in the series? Again, what happened? Why is Veilguard such trash when the other games are lauded as spectacular? Let's blame the idiots online because it's our fault. These those who make videos and criticize the garbage and praise the good, it's our fault. We have that kind of power, ladies and gentlemen. Can you believe that? The same goes in the entertainment industry with TV and movies. Channels like mine and Mauler and Nerdrotic and Critical Drinker, we got The Acolyte canceled. Channels like mine and Vera Dark and Hypnotic and Smash JT, we are the ones responsible for Dragon Age the Veilguard writing team to be fired. Imagine what we can do or will do with this power. Mwahaha, mwahaha. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and link the article if you want to peruse CBR at your own leisure. That's all I've got for today. Leave a like, leave a dislike, share with your friends, share with your enemies. Thank you for making it this far, and I hope to see you on the next one.